Container exports from major Australian ports are being hit by industrial action by the Maritime Union in its dispute with major multinational logistics company DP World. So, who is DP World? What's at the bottom of this dispute and how is it impacting agricultural exports? Paul Zalai is Director of the Freight and Trade Alliance and Secretariat of the Australian Peak Shippers Association. Paul, welcome back to Country Today. So, DP World, owned by the United Arab Emirates, how significant is it a player in the shipping world?
Yeah, they're a major global player, but in Australia, they're one of the major stevedores. They've got 40% of the container volume, and they've got operations at each of our container terminals in Fremantle, Melbourne, Sydney and Brisbane. So, a big player and a very important one.
So what's at the heart of this dispute?
Oh, look, if you really wind it back to the basics, it comes back to the pay-in conditions. So from what we understand, in the pay requirements, they're looking at about an 8% increase for the workers year on year for about 3 years. Also some increases in superannuation and a whole range of other work condition elements that they're looking at. Paying conditions, that just seems to be a huge stumbling block there between the parties to come to some type of agreement.
Yes, this industrial action's been going for a while now.
It has. So we understand that the negotiations actually commenced back in March of last year, but the protected industrial action only commenced in about September, and I say only, it's been a few months of pain during that time. So the protected industrial action, which was initially, I suppose, more niggling than crippling, was, things like refusal to do overtime or shift extensions, 2-hour stoppages here and there. So initially they weren't too severe, but over time, one of our members has described it as death by 1,000 cuts. It just adds up. And where we stand today is we've got terrible congestion at those terminals around the country.
And you estimate it's costing an average of $84 million a week?
Yeah, that's not our estimate. That's a report that DP World have produced. We haven't seen the detail of the report, but that's the headline figure that they've been quoting. Look, to be honest, we believe that might be actually quite conservative. There's just so many impacts across both imports and exports. We were looking at a figure probably more closer to about $20 million a day.
Okay, and of course that's only one side of the problem because DP World has announced huge increases in its landside fees. What are they? Yeah,
Libby, this really rubs salt into the wounds. So as if we weren't suffering enough costs. DP World and the other stevedores, I might add, have a very convenient cost recovery method. So every time a truck makes a booking or a train operator makes a booking to either deliver or pick up a container, they have to do it through a system to obtain their actual slot. That system itself actually works pretty well. It gives ordered movement of trucks and trains into and out of the terminal. So haven't got a problem with that. Initially, DP World and the other stevedores put a token fee on it, perhaps just to cover their IT costs for that. What started off as a couple of dollars is now blown out of proportion, and it's nudging closer to $200 a container. So big costs there. DP World, in their latest increase, their increase was up to about 52%. And that is particularly targeting our exporters out of Melbourne. But across the country, on imports, the increase is about 20 to 25%. And then, like I said, on exports, ranging from about 30-odd% to 52%. So we actually approached DP World saying, look, can you actually waive these terminal access charges for the period of the protected industrial action? That would buy some goodwill and give some level of compensation to our exporters and our importers during this difficult time. That was declined. Last week, we actually made a plea if you're already going to put in these increases, can you defer it? give us a bit of breathing space. Don't put in this increase until, we're in a better position. The protected industrial action has been sorted out and you've had time to clear your terminals and get back to normal. That request has also been declined.
Now, what is the impact on our agricultural exports?
Look, it's huge. So again, this particularly hits, the DP World increase particularly hits any commodity that's high volume and low value. If you've got an import container of iPhones, for example, the unit cost of this increase is marginal. We're talking about dollars or cents. When you talk about an export container of grain, these costs are huge and have devastating impacts on a sector that's just making very small margins, and an extra couple of dollars per tonne makes a huge difference to that sector. So that's just on the DP World charges. In terms of the industrial action, there's incredible impacts. So we've got a lot of vessels now with blank sailings or cancelled sailings. So particularly out of Asia now, we're seeing a lot of blank sailings. And those voyages, those vessels that are coming to Australia, many are bypassing ports that are congested and then going on to another to try and find a location where they can discharge cargo. So from an import perspective, the importer then has to work out how they move that box back to its intended destination. But for exports, what do they do? If you're a regional exporter out of regional New South Wales and your ship has bypassed Port Botany, it's a very difficult situation. So even those vessels that are arriving into the scheduled port, quite often they're doing what we call a cut and run. They're discharging their imports, but in order to try and keep close to some type of schedule for their international voyage, they will move on without necessarily accepting any export cargo. So we've got huge issues across the country, ranging in all commodities.
Paul, thank you so much for speaking to us again.
Thanks again, Libby.
Paul Zalai, Director of the Freight and Trade Alliance and Secretary of the Australian Peak Shippers Association.